Your
Fire,
your one
desire.
Yes, I know it's too late, but I want it that way. Tell
Tell
me
me
why.
why.
Tell me.
Tell me why.
Tell me why. I never wanna hear you say. See, and that's when it goes up, and that's when
And
it
that's when you can't do it.
big time.
Oh, how long have you played the guitar for?
I taught myself at age 25,
Mhm.
and then on and off for a number of years, and then life happens, kids happen, more life happens.
Mhm.
Um, and although I ordered this, I'm super excited. Um, I've been looking for what's known as a 3/4 guitar, like a smaller guitar, but it doesn't necessarily sound super cheap, like a starter guitar. Like a lot of cheap small guitars are for kids when they're learning.
Right.
But I'm just not a big guy. I don't have big hands. I don't have big playing a normal
Just a
size.
long torso.
Um, so I was looking into finding what's known as a 3/4 guitar, and I found something even better that is currently, like, I ordered this before, the world changed, so I have no idea like its timeline and trajectory, but there is something called a guitar lele. It is a ukulele with 6 strings instead of 4, so you get a little thicker, fuller sound like a guitar
Okay.
with 2 bass strings.
Yeah.
It's mostly the size of a ukulele.
And are all the strings like thicker?
Uh, no, they're just kind of. It's almost like you have the ukulele strings, but 2 bass lower sounding ones, so it sounds fuller. So I have a guitar lele somewhere.
A guitar lele.
Guitar lele, which the name alone merits the purchase of it.
Yeah, I don't know if you're going to be getting that anytime soon.
Yeah, because I had to order it from China.
It's not going to get to you anytime soon. So we have Elaine Hetterly in the chat says hi son.
Hi, Madre.
And then we also have Lindsay Stewart. She plays baritone ukulele, which is a similar size and only 4 strings. So what's up,
Yeah,
everybody?
I'm a, but I guarantee you, Lindsay's hands are bigger than my hands. Guarantee
Yeah,
it.
you have baby fingers.
Yes, or as we call it, Asian fingers. Where
There
I'm
you
from.
go.
All right, let me put down the not guitar lele. It's called a obese guitar lele.
Needs to go on a diet, guitar lele.
Yes. All right. Are we live? Or are we just still
We
coming?
no, we are 100% live. How's it going,
Oh,
Jonathan?
well, I'm glad that I wasn't doing a little like be vulgar, like, oh, we're not live yet. The whole world, with live streaming and stuff. Have you heard some of those stories of people like in Zoom meetings or something, and they leave their.
Yes. Yes, there was a the worst one I heard without getting into detail was somebody joined a business call with everybody,
Mhm.
and what they ended up doing was the guy just wasn't paying attention, ended up taking a shower. And let's just say everything was on camera. So Zoom is still uncharted territory for a lot of people in this world.
Either that, or it's a perfectly valid excuse for some of people's um, fetishes, and just be like,
True.
oh, I really didn't want you all to watch me shower. I thought I'd turn that off.
Because the only thing I want is my 32 plus employees to see me in the shower. So,
Exactly.
so I would say long time no see, but I feel like I've actually seen you the same amount as all of this started.
I was about to say, you've probably seen me just as much, if not more, than anybody else during this time. You
Pretty
can't get
much.
away from me.
I
Like when I
can't.
say we need to talk, you have to pick up the Zoom or FaceTime call
I have
because
to.
I am your boss.
I have to. But I'm still doing my best to wreak havoc in these meetings by using FaceTime filters and getting really close to the camera to make you uncomfortable. So
and I don't even know how you guys do that. So we're trying to have a very sensible, serious conversation about, you know, repopulating the media company with content and figuring out streaming from in multiple different locations. And you guys are putting animated heads on
Yep.
your body while we're talking shop.
Yep.
And I just realized I don't always feel that much older than you all, but when you guys do that and then you entertain yourselves so marvelously by doing that,
And you're just trying to keep the ball rolling.
their brain and everything else about them is of a different generation.
You know, I give you credit though because my parents, whenever they use FaceTime, they do the thing where they get right up to the camera, so you only see like their nose up. So that's kind of my indicator of how aware you are of technology and how much you can use it in your everyday life. Is how you use your FaceTime camera.
Well, I've had actually a number of sessions where my clients are laying in bed
Yeah.
and they're like propping it on their stomach. So I see this and I hear them talking. I hear them talking, or unlike your parents, instead of getting like the top part of their head, I get their mouth. So I see them moving their lips like it's not pre-recorded, but I don't make eye contact with them.
That just means they're watching Netflix. They're
You
not paying
learn a lot
attention.
about people through teletherapy that and remote video meetings that you might not get exposed to,
Right.
pun intended, in face-to-face appointments.
I believe it because it's like you are now, instead of them being in your environment, you are in theirs. You are in
Well,
their domain.
yeah, Brandon, for everybody, Brandon is basically the producer and engineer of the live morning show. He also helps run various aspects of Southeast Like Media Company, but you're usually behind the scenes.
Yes.
Where now, not only you can't be behind the computer, uh, but now I want to see your face when I'm talking to you. It's really important, more important than ever, that when we communicate, that we get to kind of like actually spend some time and see each other versus me popping into the space 10 to 15 times a day. But so talk to me a little bit, and really it's mostly for the general audience, those that are listening, how you're doing, what's it been like for you and your loved ones, how has all of these changes in the world affected you personally?
Yeah. So I'm probably gonna break this up um, into like two things. Like, because the way I looked at it when you talked about this the other day is I kind of think of it as like personally and professionally. So starting with like professionally, it honestly, like, my day to day activities haven't changed that much. I mean, all of our stuff was online anyway. You know, we would do the articles, the videos, podcasts for both Shrink Tank and Psych Bites. Um, so my actual like day to day responsibilities stayed the same, but it was kind of keeping that focus because when you go to work, it really is like your environment is everything, and I think you could touch on that too with what you've done with your workplace at home. But when I go to work, it's like I'm there to work. So if I really want to focus, I just put my headphones on, right? Whereas here I have my Xbox and my Nintendo Switch are an arm's distance of me. Like, this is my gaming computer. My dog is whining to go outside. So professionally, I've had to be a lot more focused and try to stick to my routine of like waking up at the same time, doing what I would do on a normal day, take my normal breaks. So there's that. And personally, it has been very, very tough for me, mainly because I am an extrovert. I like to go out and I like to do things. Um, and Lindsay, my fiance, who I live with, she actually has been working more. So I have seen her less since quarantine. So it's just been me and my dog the entire time, just hanging out, and it gets really lonely. It does. It does, and it's funny because I was thinking about this the other day, where leading up to this event, or this not event, but this pandemic, um, I took a lot of things for granted. You know, like I would come home from work and I was like, I don't want to go to the gym. I'm too tired. Or my buddy will call me and be like, hey, let's go grab a drink. And I'll just say like, I don't really want to go grab a drink right now, right? But now I'm in a situation where I cannot go to the gym. I cannot go get a drink. And like that's been the toughest part for me. It's just kind of not going stir crazy. But so that's it for me. But what about you?
Well, my life's pretty much the same.
Yeah.
I don't. Um, well, it was interesting. I was actually talking to a client here recently, and they were talking about a family member who lives alone,
Hmm.
and their life basically day to day is designed to weather a global pandemic and self quarantine. They're like, their life hasn't changed at all.
Mm-hmm.
And there are some people that's what their life has been like here in the last several weeks, is not too much of disruption or adjustment.
Mm-hmm.
That would not be the case for me.
No.
So uh, obviously, well, not obviously, I'm an extrovert too. So I tend to be, out and about throughout the practice all
Mm-hmm.
day long. If I'm not in session, I'm walking around, I'm socializing with staff, with other clinicians, I'm coming into the media uh, area to see what's going on. And that just ability to have movement really is a great buffer for spending so much time one-on-one working with people that have some very real challenges and stressors in their life that they're really looking to me to walk alongside them and help them. So the idea of really being very limited to social and external outlets has been a big adjustment. I love movies, right? Part of the reason that I'm a part of the media company is I love to go see movies. I love to talk about movies. I love to go see concerts and live music. I love to talk about it. And both of those really are very challenging now. A lot of the things that I really love, and then the ability to talk about it with people face to face throughout the day, or over coffee and other stuff like that, very limited. Um, I've never had really a workspace at home. I do a lot of writing, I do a lot of paperwork and other stuff at home, but I would generally do it at the kitchen table. And that was just sort of a centralized place so I could still see people coming and going. I
Right.
could let the dogs in and out. I've never really had to create a space specifically for work, and I've had to do that. And then, really, one of the things you touched on was probably after a few days, I realized I felt like I was intruding in space that wasn't mine. And unlike you, who maybe doesn't have a spare bedroom or a spare space that you just can convert into a
None.
work area, I did, but I really hadn't done anything with it. And I realized I needed to make that space my own in order for me to feel more like how I tend to approach the work I do with my clients. So I came back to the office and I grabbed a bunch of decorations and furnishings and trinkets and stuff like that, and really kind of created a backdrop to where I feel like I'm more in my element. And even the clients that I work with, when we are doing teletherapy, they can sort of see some familiar things.
Right.
Um, but I'd actually kind of held off on that because before all of this started, we had just put a contract out on a house, and we had just sold our house, and we were just sort of waiting till the closing date, which would be in about 5 days. And lo and behold, who would ever think that a global pandemic might interfere with a sale of a house and moving? So unfortunately, which we suspected that this might happen, was the sale fell through.
Mm-hmm.
And it really was the people that were buying our house, they were selling their house, and their sale fell through. And so they could no longer follow through on our contract. And so we went from having our house sold, planning to move in 2 weeks. Were downsizing, so we had sold a lot of our furniture. About 30 to 40% of our furniture we've sold. We probably got about half, if not more,
I do
boxed up
slate.
and packed. And now all of a sudden, it's like we have to put our house back up on the market, but we can't really make it look like it's livable.
Right.
But number two, what does that look like when there is a stay-at-home order? How do you have people come into your house and look at their house? Um, and the reality is we're pretty sure that we're going to be here for a while. But now we have zero sofas, we have zero couches, we have one chair and one beanbag, and the dogs have taken over the beanbags.
We should make a series of you and your family building new furniture.
There you go. Let's turn back to the Amish ways and the
Right.
Amish ways.
You got it. Now,
Um,
I was going to ask, how has it been with, because obviously I just live with my fiance. I know some of my family members have been talking to me about what's been going on with them, but how is it actually being in the house with specifically kids too, who aren't going to school, who have all this probably pent up energy and just raring to do things, and they really can't. Like, what's it like with the family dynamic?
well, there's interesting family dynamics in my household because I have two daughters. Both are teenagers. One is wired as an introvert. and the
Okay.
other is an extrovert. So the introvert loves this. Are you kidding me? Like,
It's like
can get online with friends, and then when had enough, just get offline.
right.
Loves all the extra time. There's enough time to waste. There's enough time to be productive. There's enough
Mhm.
time to socialize. And so very early on, this was like this was like Christmas.
Yeah.
Then there's the extrovert, and even before the stay-at-home order, just the idea of like, maybe it's not a great idea just to be hanging out.
Hmm.
She was already looking for ways around that. Like she would find a branch that was 5 feet long. And she was like, now, if we make sure we're never closer than 5 feet, can we have people over? And just always angling and maneuvering for social connection. And so now, unlike parents and families with younger kids, my daughters are teenagers, and so it's really an opportunity for them to demonstrate kind of self-direction, self-management, coming
Right.
up with their own schedule. And so, probably after a week, we all came together and we talked about come up with a routine, come up with some type of structure and schedule. It doesn't have to be every minute, doesn't have to be every hour,
Hmm.
but this is an opportunity for you to kind of outline what you think would be reasonable expectations during this time. And who knows how long this time's going to go versus their mother or me coming up with a schedule, because
Yeah.
I really
For
didn't want
sure.
to do that. And I really didn't want to create something that required a lot of oversight and monitoring on our part.
Hmm.
I don't want our daughters to go backwards by intrusive or over parenting during this time, which unfortunately is what a lot of families are experiencing, and they're figuring out maybe the hard way of how to adjust with this new normal that nobody has prepared for. There was, if I had known about this, I would have written a book, Parenting in the Age of a Pandemic. Would have
I
been a
would have bought toilet
bestseller.
paper. You know,
Yes.
and the thing that you mentioned that really sticks with me, and I don't know if you recall this, but when this all first started going on, and like the first case was um, reported in Seattle, I remember telling you, I said, Jonathan, this comes here, like I want to work from home, and not knowing that everybody would be forced to work from home. And I think you touched on this a little bit, but I think for me the scariest part about this whole thing is not knowing how long it's going to last.
Yeah.
We have no idea when it's going to end. I know some businesses were supposed to have these like regulations lifted by the end of April, and now some people are saying July. Something near and dear to my heart, the NFL draft. They were saying that they might have to push that back, and they don't know when that season's going to start. So there's a lot of things. It's just at a time right now where almost like entertainment, like supply and demand of entertainment's at an all time high. Like it's like people are trying to find a way to fuel that and just get everybody through this time.
Yeah, one of the most common features of anxiety is the difficulty of tolerating the unknown.
Right.
And right now, we're all living in that space.
Mm-hmm.
And some people operate well with the unknown. I tend to have a pretty high tolerance for the unknown, things that are out of my control. Sometimes I think my wife wishes I got a little bit more rattled by that, because then
Yeah.
she wouldn't feel so alone, or she wouldn't feel the need
Like, why are
to
you acting so fine?
overcompensate. Yeah, she's more likely to overcompensate because I am undercompensating. I'm not as worried as maybe I should be
Right.
about it. So she feels like she has to be worried for the both of us.
Mm-hmm.
But when people, whether just be everyday people, because everybody experiences some level of stress, some level of anxiety. Um, but for those that really struggle with like high intense or pathological levels of anxiety, this unknown, and everything's unknown. It's not just like when we will get over the worst of the pandemic and the spread, but also when will schools open back up? When will people's jobs, go back if they're furloughed? How long will that be? What will be the financial hit?
Mm-hmm.
Um, Everything has been put on hold in a
Yeah.
lot of ways. So if one thing in somebody's life was unknown, I see people all the time that have difficulty just wrapping their head around one unknown, and how to not have their brain just go into these worst case scenarios and just worry, 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 worry.
But now
But
it's
then
everything.
when you look at everything, and something as simple as uh, when am I going to get toilet paper? to
That's my struggle.
I'm pretty sure I'm going to get furloughed or lose my job, but when is it going to happen? All of those things, it's it's surprising how much people are not yet losing it, and
Yeah,
it's this sounds grim, but I'm anticipating the longer this goes on, we are going to see some severe mental health deterioration of people because they
for sure.
I think one of the things you're seeing with people and how they're trying to exert control is they're minimizing this.
Yeah,
Um, you know,
100%.
and I think that there's something to be said. I'm a big believer in optimism. I'm a big believer in not emotionally reacting or panicking, but I'm also a big believer in being thoughtful and smart about things.
Hmm.
And all the writing on the wall suggests this is going to be the new normal for a while.
I
And the
agree.
longer it goes on, the more people are going to, I think, kind of really struggle in coping, especially since you and I were just talking about some of our primary coping outlets are things that have been postponed or canceled. And
Ripped from
so,
our hands.
exactly.
Hmm.
So, the longer this goes on, the more I'm going to want to go see a concert and get out of the house or go travel. I can't really do that.
No, and one thing, without getting into too much detail, somebody very close to me actually had to file for unemployment because they had to. Their work is dealing with people, and they don't have the ability to do it online. So, and that's something like kind of what you alluded to is you don't know how long this is going to last, and now some people either aren't getting a paycheck or their paycheck is significantly reduced, and that's scary. That is a recipe for disaster, especially for somebody who is you know close to my age going through that, never having to deal with this. And then you see the headlines of like, is this a recession? What's going to happen? And it's interesting. And then even I saw an article too saying, like you said, you don't know how long it's gonna last, and times are definitely different. The article that I read said that even after this, the world's changed.
Sure.
There's quite possibly a brand new norm moving forward, and even that's intimidating because we don't know what that is either.
Yeah, it's going to be interesting when we get to the other end of this, however long it is, all the different industries and areas of everyday life, what's going to change?
Mm-hmm.
Are we going to see, even with the education system, shift more to online and remote? Are there going to be certain things that now show the inefficiency or the ability to translate a lot of it into technological services, which then is going to have a dramatic impact on the economy and employment?
Mm-hmm.
If a number of things are going to be taken out of people's hands and can be regulated through technology and online services. Some of it's going to be great. It's a good opportunity for us to step back and evaluate how we live day to day life. But other things are going to continue to have negative ripple effect in people's lives. I remember I was actually in grad school when the housing crash happened in '08 and '09. And even, let's say, 2011, 2012, good
Mm-hmm.
4 or 5 years afterwards, I was still seeing and working with clients that were still dealing with the mental, emotional fallout of the housing crisis and the depression that hit. Men that were struggling with their ability to, um, support their families. They had zero confidence. They felt perpetually scared of things that couldn't control. And that's really one of the things that's going to happen both now, but even whenever we get to the other end of this, is all of this. There's a lot of things that were completely out of our control. And one of
Mm-hmm.
the things that brings people safety and comfort in day-to-day living is a sense of control,
Right.
feeling like they can direct their lives. And when you look around right now, there's a lot of things that are outside of our control, or there's a lot of things that, in order for us to get through this, we have to um, act in a way of community rather than an individual.
one Hundred
And
percent.
that can really be challenging for people because you're giving up a sense of control in your own life, right? We are
Mm-hmm.
a very individualistic culture. But right now, everything you do, everything I do has implications far beyond just my life, my well being, your life, your well being. And we're seeing some people really struggle with that. We're seeing that, the impact that you have on other people. We need to be able to think in that way through empathy and consequences rather than my rights what I think is best or right for me.
100%. And we actually have a few questions before I move on to the next topic. One is from Craig Pullman, Southeast
Sounds
Psych's
like
Craig Pullman.
you
You guys
sure
might
that's not
know him.
a scammer?
Contributor on both Psych Bites and Shrink Tank. Craig asked us, and I'll start with you for pretty much all these. What are some of the long-term changes you anticipate?
Yeah, one of the interesting things that I've been sharing with a lot of my clients is if a global pandemic doesn't provide you an opportunity to gain perspective in your life, I don't know what it will take for
Mm-hmm.
someone to get perspective. So one of the things I think one of the changes we're going to see is the necessity of community. In fact, I was working a lot in therapy with young people that are really struggling with social skills and seeing the need to actually be in the same room and interact with people. So much of it has gone online. Well, what's going to happen now that that's no longer a choice, but that is the only way for you to socialize? Now, for
Yep.
some people, that is going to become the new norm because they're going to get comfortable with it. They're going to sort of see the ease and access of it. But for others, they're going to recognize through the elimination of it, they're going to recognize how important getting out, being in the same room with
Mm-hmm.
people is. And they're going to see the value of community interaction and participation. I think one of the other things we're going to gain perspective the more we hear these stories, because we're going to hear these stories, is we're going to hear stories of people that contracted the coronavirus and died, and they died alone, and they died without the ability to be beside loved ones or to be able to say certain things to certain people to really um, kind of leave this world on terms that they felt at peace.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that's going to gain a lot of perspective for people that maybe hold grudges or there's estrangement in relationships. When you hear how everybody assumes that if there's distance in a relationship or with a family member, that you will have time and opportunity at some point down the road to make things right. And what we're recognizing with a lot of people is they're not getting that chance.
Mm-hmm.
People are finding out a loved one is falling ill, and then within 48 to 72 hours, they're gone. And not only are they gone, there was never an opportunity for either side to really say goodbye, clear the air, make things right, or reconcile. So I do think there's going to be a higher premium on our relationships, which I think those are going to be absolute positives and benefits to our society. One of the things we already touched on, I think will have both good and bad, is reliance on technology and remote business and operations. Will that put some jobs and some trades more at risk of completely moving more towards remote kind of services versus face to face? And that, in some ways, you hear that sort of contrast. I just said we're going
Mm-hmm.
to look at the value of relationships and people, but on the other hand, from a business financial standpoint, are people going to say, you know what, do we really need to be spending that money for rental office space if people can do this from home?
Yeah, and I think to piggyback off that, I do think that both one tangible and one intangible thing that will come from this is kind of what you said. I think tangible thing is a lot more people will be, I think, working from home. I think a lot of people are starting to realize that there are some jobs you can do, remote. Um, but to the intangible of that, and kind of what you said with relationships, I want to add on to that accountability.
Hmm.
Because not only should, when you're working from home, should you be accountable, but also, like what you said, like being together, being accountable for being there for other people. And I just hope that when all this blows over, like, I hope that these lessons stick with us, because right now, in my eyes, when people come together, it's when all of us are experiencing the same thing. We're all fighting a common enemy, which in this case is what's going on right now. Um, so we also had we actually have two more questions. One from Marielle Butler. She is the project manager and marketer for Shrink Tank and Psych Bites, and also the producer of the Shrink Tank podcast. She said, "What are some ways we can protect our mental health to prevent ourselves from from that deteriorated mental health you mentioned earlier?"
Well, I know Marielle's just asking hypothetically for all of our viewers that could benefit from such awareness and insight. Um, without going into too complex of strategies or ideas, I've really been encouraging my clients and myself, for those of you that are a part of my life, to own your feelings. It's
Mhm.
okay. There's no right way to feel right now, right? And we do not want to suppress or internalize our emotions because eventually they will come out. And right now we're all self quarantined, so there's not a lot of space and places for that to come out.
True.
To own your feelings, but one of the really important things is that we recognize you can feel something without feeling the need to act on it. So
Hmm.
somebody can be really stressed, overwhelmed, but they don't have to make decisions in life based upon that feeling and that experience of feeling overwhelmed. um, because we have choice, and that ability to kind of sometimes detach and observe what's going on with us and just pause, I think, is really important. I've been encouraging my clients and myself, for those of you, again, kind of follow me online, we're going to have to get creative about our coping skills and strategies, because a lot of people, your coping outlets are no longer, they're temporarily suspended. So we really need to find some open-mindedness of what we might be willing to explore and have a really curious mind about what might help us unwind, de-stress. What are some effective ways to really utilize your solitude? What are ways to connect in community, either with the people that you live with or the people that you love through remote advances? I've recently taken up artwork again, something that I really haven't done since I left high school. We were joking. I've been playing the guitar. I ordered right before all this happened a new instrument, the guitar lele, a 6-string ukulele. I'm
Which is
so
never
excited,
coming in the mail.
and I just love the name guitar lele. Right? That's so me. Just take two words and merge them together.
Hmm.
You can't be any lazier than that. I've had, and so I've really had to challenge clients to lean in on your coping outlets. We're going to have to find new ones. And the other thing is, we are hoping that we will never have this amount of free time ever again in our life. And that really is an opportunity, because think of all the things that you have said in your life, like, I'd be really interested in that, or I'd love to try that. But the main reason that you never took the plunge was, I don't have enough time.
Right.
That excuse really goes away. Now, if it was something like, I want to go on a cruise with 200 other people, yeah, you still have a very valid reason why that's not going to happen. But if it's art, if it's learning a foreign language, if it's possibly doing landscaping or woodwork, like, you have the
Learning about
opportunity
quokkas.
now. Yeah, and so, Dave Verhagen, a colleague in our Nashville office, talked about behave in a way that at the end of this, you look back and you feel really proud and good about yourself and what you did. I don't believe people have to maximize every moment and, be productive and successful, but I do believe in being intentional. Let's be
Hmm.
very intentional in our living. And if we're gonna just sort of like be very casual and relaxed, own it, but make it a conscious decision and not something passive. Because no matter what, your time's going to get filled. It's just whether or
Right.
not you're really intentional about it or whether you're passive. And at the end of the day, the end of the week, the end of this social isolating, you look back and you're like, what did I do with all of that time that I had?
And and I would say for me personally, and you, it's funny you said it because I've heard this on every single podcast. So and it's like you said it verbatim. It's like you have all this time and it's gonna get filled. So what are you going to fill it with? Are you going to be scrolling on Instagram for 8 hours a day? Are you gonna take a course online? Are you gonna play the guitar? Are you gonna paint? So I think like 100% you need to be aware of what you're doing. But for me, I'm actually not only kind of participating in old hobbies and things that I've enjoyed, but I've also been like, and Craig actually talked about this, like a surge of in the practice of mindfulness is I've been thinking to myself, like, why does it take a pandemic for me to want to work out again? Or why does it take a pandemic for me to pick up a Udemy course or read a book? So my big thing is actually in the future when we are seeing better days, my goal would is going to be carry that stuff over. Because I don't want this to just be another excuse for me to do a bunch of things and then get right back into my old routine. So I'm taking this time to like do things that I enjoy and pick one or two things to make sure that I keep with me, throughout the rest of my life.
Sure. And I think one of the reasons a lot of people struggle with bettering themselves or improving themselves in day-to-day life is we as a nation, as a culture, we value and romanticize busyness.
Hmm.
And so in order to introduce self-improving aspects into our life, there's an element of sacrifice. Something's got to go. Whereas when you just mentioned a moment ago and you listed all those things, being on Instagram for 8 hours, playing video games,
Hmm.
doing yoga or mindfulness, I've been framing it with my clients this way. There's really enough time to do all of those.
Yeah.
You're not really having to sacrifice. So this, you're never, I mean, other, obviously we have all these stressors going on right now in the world and around us, but most people are not in a position right now where they're having to choose, like, do I want to watch Netflix or do I want to paint?
Right.
You can do both. And there's more than enough time to do so. What we tend to just need to work on is a lot of self-management and self direction. When you find yourself just mindlessly in front of Netflix and you're no longer enjoying it, it's that ability to have awareness, like, this isn't really fun anymore. And then to be able to identify, like, what would be a better use of my time, either for enjoyment or productive, and that ability to direct yourselves. Because one of the things a lot of people have lost, and we're going to see how everybody does in this area, is there's a lot less external reinforcements
Right.
around, right? You're working from home. I'm not micromanaging you. You don't know about the secret cameras that I have that are checking out, like, your work performance. I will say your dog seems to do more work throughout the day than Brandon does, and I wish you'd put clothes on when you work. But anyhow,
No can do. Perks of working from
people,
home.
people that are students, they're recognizing, okay, I don't have attendance. I'm getting this bulk of work. I'm getting plenty of time, more than enough time to get it done. Am I going to get it done?
Yeah.
How am I going to go about it? Because I don't have 5 periods each day. I don't have attendance. We're going to sort of see where people's skill set and strength is with self-management and self-discipline versus needing external reinforcers to get us to do stuff. It's usually one of the biggest challenges my college age guys experience when they go off to college, when their school administration doesn't come with them and when their parents don't come with them. How well do they do when their classes don't take attendance? Their professors don't care if they show up or not.
Ooh,
At the
that's
end of the
tough.
day, their grades are based upon their performance.
That's tough. Yeah. So, let's move on to the next topic. Before we do that, I just want to share what some people are doing in their free time. So, Frank Gaskell, Southeast Psych, is doing some watercolor and playing Fortnite. Lindsay Stewart at Southeast Psych is taking some online dance classes, costuming, and playing a lot of music. Deliman7203 on YouTube says social distancing and self quarantining has been my lifestyle for the past 8 years. LOL. And then I know Sean hasn't commented on this, but Sean Beck for Shrink Tank It's Like Bites, he's been making a lot of funny videos. So seems like everybody's staying busy.
Mhm.
So what do you got next for us, Jonathan?
Well, I do want to talk about, there are some things that, believe it or not, some people, the changes are actually lowering some stress.
Yeah.
A lot of people, school stress, whether it be that busyness, whether it be social anxiety, school anxiety. We've seen a number of people that this has actually been a great relief to kind of help detach from, remove from a very stressful environment that
Mm-hmm.
day in, day out they were being expected to go into. I think if money was a stressor, it still is, but perspective in terms of having to, in a lot of ways, not choose to scale back your life, you have to, right?
Yeah.
And I think for a lot of people, our individual hierarchy of needs is changing to where what we're recognizing is truly essential in this time. And I mean, I think about, I mean, one of the things people know about me is I love to eat out. I don't like to cook. I hate
Oh, I think we lost Jonathan for a second.
indulgence for me. And now that really, did you lose me? My
We're good.
back?
We're all caught up. Yep.
Okay. I was just talking about my benign indulgences of eating out, not cooking. And this really has required stepping back and saying, if people are in a financial pinch, um, right now, most likely our house sale has fallen through and just all the
Mm-hmm.
money that the costs that are around that. The idea of just grabbing food, every day for lunch you recognize that is not only a luxury at this point, it's excess. It's really something that no longer you have the margin for error. So sometimes we need simplified lives to just reduce our stressor that it's really difficult to do when the rest of your life is operating in this normal fashion. That's
Right.
why a lot of people with New Year's resolutions, when there's this defined marker, a change, a start, it's easier to start something. It's not necessarily easier for them to sustain it.
Hmm.
But when so many things are changing around you, for some people, that's all they need to really scale back and minimize their life. And they're going to find great kind of comfort in scaling back the excess and things that they recognize on a value level is not necessary, but they would have difficulty changing their behaviors.
So you touched on it a bit, but just to make it more like clean, what are some stressors that that you have reduced due to this whole quarantine and isolation?
Sure. Well, one of the things that the stressor just as a family man, and when your kids and you have such busy and hectic schedules
Hmm.
that now my daughters with work, with play, with sports, um, it's not happening anymore.
Right.
So now we just can physically be in the same space together. Now, they're at an age where just being together just creates these very organic kind of moments of fun and interaction and light conversation versus we don't necessarily have to schedule a game night.
Yeah.
We don't necessarily have to schedule a movie night, which is usually in the past what we would have to do in order for us to preserve and prioritize and protect that time together.
Hmm.
But now we can check in throughout the day. We can have lunch together. We could go for walks. We can watch silly videos throughout the day to where you feel connected and it doesn't have to be this great big thing. Because I always worry about am I available enough to my family?
Right.
Um, you know, one of the things that I always struggled with is getting adequate sleep. I got more than enough time to sleep. The amount of time that I would take to get ready and travel to and from work with rush hour,
Hmm.
that's gone right there. I've gained probably about an hour and a half every day. Now it takes me 12 seconds to walk into the guest bedroom.
Yeah. That's been a big one for me. Is I've noticed a lot more like reduced stress by very little things that when you do every single day, you don't realize how much like even the little bit amount of stress that it adds onto your day. Like when you look at the span of the day, it actually is a lot. And one of those is yeah, what you said, like not having to commute has been wonderful. Not having to sit in traffic, drive for 15 to 25 minutes to get to work, and being able to wake up and just go right to work is really nice. Also, um, just being able to take breaks. Like I know at Southeast Psych, we can and Shrink Tank and Psych Bites, like we can get up and we can go outside or something. But if I want to step away, I throw a leash on my dog and I go for a walk. You know,
Yeah,
so it's been throughout the I never once have had that thought being home like, oh my gosh, it's only 2 o'clock. It's like it just kind of seems like the days just string together a lot smoother now.
sure. And there's two other things that I think for me personally have really decreased my levels of stress.
Hmm.
I already talked about both of these things, but that ability to own your feelings and kind of to be authentic about what's going on in your life while at the same time having perspective. Because right now, people are worried about work. I
Yeah.
get that. They're worried about their finances. And, I think that's a very valid and sensible thing to be monitoring and aware of. But then you also recognize, wow, people have already lost their jobs. That gains perspective of the everyday irritations and annoyances that we sometimes have with our
Hmm.
jobs and with our work colleagues, things of that nature. If we find ourselves just sort of kind of nitpicking and complaining about things, people they're scared to death about their elderly family members or loved ones. People are sick and in isolation,
Yep.
and so there's all of the for people that work in essential businesses, they may be going to work every day worried, or your loved one goes to work every day and you're worried, are they being exposed, are they at high risk of contracting the coronavirus. So there's all these things that can also add perspective. For most of us, our brain is kind of wired to find something to complain about and be unhappy about.
Oh yeah.
And perspective, really at this global level, uh, um, in terms of really life changing and life threatening level, allows us an opportunity to step back and say, um, appreciation, gratitude. The other
Mhm.
thing I've started to do is I've just started to really reach out to people that I haven't stayed in as much contact in, just to see what's going on with them. Are they healthy and safe? Are their loved ones, are their parents healthy and safe? Something that I've always wanted to do, but the busyness of life sometimes really just sort of crowds it out, versus I'm missing that social connection. What
Mhm.
better time to really reconnect with people to see how they're doing, but also to let people know that you're thinking about them and that you hope everything's okay in their lives.
I 100% agree. And that's what I want the homework for everybody watching is to reach out to somebody that you haven't. Because I had this talk not too long ago, very, very similar conversation. And the person I was talking to said, yeah, but I think it's kind of weird to just text somebody I haven't talked to in like a year. And then I just said, well, I mean, if they texted you, would you think it's weird? And the answer is probably no. So text somebody, talk to somebody you haven't talked to. Like you said, now if you need an excuse to start a conversation, like now is the perfect excuse to rekindle some old friendships.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
All right, so what else do we got on the agenda, Jonathan?
Well, I do want to talk to people a little bit about taking care of their mental health. I know Marielle and some other people wrote in about that, but I want to specifically talk about teletherapy
Okay.
because right now, a lot of times people are just kind of adjusting. And I already mentioned some of the things that people might be feeling a little bit less stress about.
Mm-hmm.
But the longer this goes on, the longer there is unknowns and the longer there are just natural consequences and ramifications of this, the more we're going to see stress, anxiety, fear. We're going to see financial strain. We're going to see more relational and family disruption and stress when they're all kind of clustered in together.
Mm-hmm.
And one of the things I really encourage people is, don't wait till things get catastrophically bad to address and get some help. um, Teletherapy is is effective. It's just as effective as going in and talking with somebody. I've actually found a number of my clients, they've actually embraced teletherapy because they're in their own space of comfort. They're not having to go somewhere. I get the scariest place in the world for me is a dentist's office. A dentist
Yes, they are
office,
the worst.
they're evil good people, serve a purpose, but they want to inflict pain on us.
And they
I'm
try to talk to you when your mouth is wide open. Yeah, like how you doing today?
and I could never get out of it because Julie, my wife, worked in dental offices for like
so you're
half of
stuck.
her adult life. But a dentist office to me is right. Immediately go in. I'm tense.
Mm-hmm.
It feel like I'm already anticipating dreading and pain and bad news. I have a cavity, something like that. And as much as we try, and if you've ever been to Southeast Psych, we put a lot of effort into try to create a very normalized, fun atmosphere. Just knowing you're going into someplace, someone's going to go talk to you, you're going into office, that can start to put walls up with people.
Yes.
So to dial in and have somebody sitting, I've talked with guys, they've been in their garage, they've been on their patios, they've been in their rooms. I've had people on their balcony. I've had someone in a car, someone else was driving, but they're going to and from someplace, and we're doing teletherapy. And so that element of ease and comfort can sometimes really disarm people and
Mm-hmm.
help them kind of communicate in a way that's very comfortable and natural for them. But you know, for a lot of people, the problems and the challenges that they had in life haven't gone away because now they're socially isolated. If anything, there's probably a lot more stressors,
Mm-hmm.
a lot more challenges, and you have a lot less outlets of how you might normally cope with them.
For sure.
And so, really encourage folks to prioritize their mental health, their mental well being. Taking care of your mental health is one key way you can take care of your physical health and your immune system. mental, emotional, psychological stress,
It's everything,
it
really.
has a negative impact on your immune system and your health. So if you are very fearful of being exposed and contracting the coronavirus, prioritize your mental health and your stressors, because right now I'm sleeping better, but a lot of people aren't.
Yeah.
I've actually reduced and eliminated a lot of my vices. A lot of people are going to maybe be drinking more.
Hmm.
This is a really scary time for those that are in recovery and are practicing sobriety, because a lot of the program and a lot of their social support was going someplace and connecting with people that were struggling together. And now some things are difficult for translating online. We need to find ways to help people. And the great thing about teletherapy is, if you can't come to us, we're gonna come to you.
It's
We want to
convenient.
help. The thing about therapists and mental health professionals is they've taken a role and an oath that they want to help people. And right now, people need help because they're scared, they're struggling, they're suffering, they're grieving.
Hmm. And so, for those in viewing who are in Nashville and Charlotte, Southeast Psych offers teletherapy. But if somebody wanted to start this process and jump into it, or maybe they are normal, like are used to therapy but have never done teletherapy, like where do you start? Like how do you get this information? Like if I wanted to go see a therapist, I could just walk right into Southeast Psych and see somebody.
Sure.
We don't have that luxury right now. So like what's like the very first step to getting your foot in the virtual door?
Sure. I mean, Psychology Today has a resource on their website where you can search therapists and
Hmm.
counselors in your area. But here's the great news about teletherapy: it really does expand the reach. So now I can offer my services to anybody in the state of North Carolina because my license applies to the entire state. Now, I would normally only market myself in the Charlotte area because people would traditionally drive to, come in, want to meet face to face.
Hmm.
That's no longer an option right now. But if somebody 200 miles away in North Carolina and they feel like they have limited resources, they now could get connected with somebody on the west side of North Carolina, Charlotte or Asheville, or things along those lines. The resources in your state for therapy and mental health services are now available to you. If you
Yep.
go online and Google, most practices, Southeast Psych included, have really included information and links of how to get connected and start that process, because we recognize that, again, we need to make this as seamless and convenient for people, because if they're seeking out mental health services, they're already struggling with something. Their mind is
Hmm.
already preoccupied by a lot of things. Psychologists, mental health professionals, we're trying to make it as simple and convenient for you.
True, and it's exactly like and Mariel provided a link in chat, which is awesome. But I mean, it's exactly like I told you. It's if you were even before all this, if you're chronically ill, you won't stop going to the doctor. So you shouldn't stop going to therapy either if you are going now, or if you need to go. You know.
Sure. The other thing is, for those that are already in therapy, I've really encouraged them, keep your routine. Keep your routine, because one of the things that, and I'll speak predominantly to guys, to dudes, because that's who I mostly work with, is guys are notorious for waiting longer than necessary until things get really bad before they get help.
Hmm.
But they're also notorious as soon as things start to get better, they take their foot off the pedal and they start to back off on the things that really got them to the good place that they're at. And so, one of the things about mental health services isn't just crisis management and triaging problems, it's also how to develop maintenance skills for life. How to, when something's going well and going good, how do you develop the tools and the habits to keep that sustained in your life versus having a life that perpetually goes up and down? You have high points and low points.
Hmm.
And a lot of times when things get well, people drop off on the things that are required to keep things operating at that optimal level, and we just anticipate then it's going to decline if we don't keep doing what got us where we're at.
Take care of yourself.
Yes,
Take care of yourself.
it's as simple as that, right?
It's as simple as that. So, Jonathan, we covered a lot of awesome stuff. As titled in the video above us, how's quarantine changed your life? People shared that. You also covered teletherapy, but what does all of this mean for Shrink Tank?
Sure.
What are we going to do moving forward? What's kind of our goal, our objective? Because I haven't been working these last 2 weeks. I don't know if you know this, but I've done nothing but play video games. So I just really this is more of a performance review, if anything.
That is not true. You've grown a lot of hair.
A
So,
lot.
and so have I. And my hair has gotten to the point where it's starting to feel like I'm wearing a toupee or like an 80s comb over. So,
What if I cut your hair and you cut mine?
hmm. Let me think about that. Let me get back to you on that. But let me share with our audience. In a lot of ways, you would expect a media company to immediately shift and be able to offer content and programming online. But the reality was, all of us were really needing to step back and really assess everything going on in our lives, not just with work, but in our personal lives. And for those with families, every aspect of our life has been changing on the go the last several weeks. But we're now at a point where we're ready to start to gear up and ramp up our online content through Shrink Tank and through Psych Bites, which is our website that's devoted to practical psychology.
Mhm.
And we also step back and ask, what do people really need in this moment? What do they need to hear from us? And so in the coming days and weeks, you're going to see Shrink Tank, the revival of our podcast videos, the live morning show in this regard, where we're going to have a number of clinicians from Southeast Psych or even people from around the nation kind of video in and have conversations about what's going on in our culture. How are we handling it individually, as communities, as a nation? We're also going to be introducing new content, new clinicians bringing stuff about, whether it be about mindfulness, healthy living, how to sometimes translate and transition your coping strategies when you have limited outlets and you're now having to operate a lot of them at home or on your own. I know I'm going to be gearing back up the Psych Cinema video series with movies really not at a premium now because theaters are shut down. A lot of the new
Yeah.
releases are being shelved. I'm going to really focus more on three types of films. I'm going to focus one specifically on films of resiliency and hope. Not necessarily movies that are overly sentimental or preachy, but really movies that capture the best parts of the human spirit and our capacity to overcome. I'm going to look at films that shaped my love of cinema because right now a lot of people in troubling times turn to nostalgic escapism and comfort
Mhm.
films. And so I'm going to share with my audience through Psych Cinema some of the films that I look back fondly on or were really pivotal at an important point in my life or for various reasons. And then the third, because we value the relationships that we've established here online, is we're going to really lean in on audience requests, the films and television shows you
Yes.
want us to tackle on Psych Cinema and do a deconstruction of the mental health and psychology aspects of that.
Yes, and that's very big, guys. With this oversaturation of media content going on right now, we definitely want to know what you guys want us to review and talk about. So if you haven't already, like Shrink Tank on Facebook, follow us on YouTube, follow us on Twitter, check out our website. We're all over the place. So we're your favorite social media. We're most likely on it. And if not, let us know and we will get on it. So yeah, that's it for me, Jonathan.
That's it for me too. Yeah, this has been a good a good rebooting.
For
Thank you
sure.
everyone for watching. Be ready for every Friday our live morning show. It's not necessarily going to be me, may not be Brandon. You're probably already sick of us after this, good 45, 50-minute talk. But we really want to have a conversation and dialogue with you all about what's going on in our culture during these very difficult and challenging times.
Or next Friday will be the haircut stream. We'll see.
That, yeah, that will be very cringy episode.
All right, everybody. I am Brandon Gage, and to my left is Jonathan Hetterly. Thank you so much for watching, and be good to each other and to
Yes,
yourself.
be kind and be safe.
Have a good Friday, everybody.
Take care.